Hi everybody, this is Brandy Rollins of Raw Foods on a Budget, and I'm going to try this video again. The sound was low, and so I'm hoping that the sound records correctly this time. And so today I wanted to talk about being a consumer versus being a creator. And this is really important because we are taught to consume and not get anywhere. That is to buy and buy and buy, kind of like buying the potential for change. So since, we're on the Raw Foods Facebook page and we talk about raw foods, so let's, pertain this to raw foods. And, we kind of have this belief that by buying a lot of books, buying entry into a lot of programs, hearing a lot of people speak, that we need all these things to actually create change in our lives. And the truth is that we actually need a small portion of that. We just need to get started. And so the example that I like to give is when I started doing raw foods 14, 15 years ago. I think maybe I was 23 at the time. And, there wasn't a lot of information out there. And I pretty much had a book, Raw Power. And at some point I added Breakthrough, the documentary by Gingy Talaferro and Storm Talaferro to the mix. But I just started with one book. And the most important thing that I did was just to start. But we're so used to just kind of like buying the potential for change and not actually changing. And the mind works in a way to where it just likes to keep running the same wheel and not actually getting anywhere. And so I know we've all had those experiences where our mind just keeps running in circles and running in circles and running in circles. And we'll do that around change. We will run in circles around change, but not actually manifest change, not actually create change in our lives. So one of the things I talk to people in my programs, and so I have two programs that I run each month. One is called Raw Foods on a Budget, a 28-day boot camp. That's all about teaching people how to eat raw foods in an affordable way. And then the other program, a newer program called Raw Yoga Life, and that combines life empowerment coaching. It combines yoga and raw foods. And it's a 21-day challenge, and that's on a monthly basis. And one of the things I try to teach people is to get them out of the habit of being consumers and moving them over to being creators. Because when you're consuming things, all you're doing is living in that potential, and you're not actually creating the change. You're not actually starting, but you think that you are. I think in some time, actually, the way that our brains work is that, I studied childhood obesity for about 10 years. And I got my PhD in human development family studies, was a behavioral scientist. And I was very much interested in the reward circuits of the brain, particularly how it relates to food. But once you get into that literature, you learn that there are a lot of things that can trigger the reward centers of the brain, including sex and drugs. But that reward, particularly, there are certain parts of the reward system that are dopamine mediated that thrive off of anticipation, right? So it's like, the thought of, right before you get that donut, the most exciting part is the anticipation. Once you get and you start eating it, you don't get actually as much reward from it as you do than when you're in the anticipation phase. And so we actually, if you bring that back to the kind of consumerism that we practice around raw foods, or we practice around a lot of things, including like decorating our houses, buying cars, that exciting phase is kind of in the planning phase of those things. So planning to do raw foods, thinking of, all the changes that are going to happen, thinking of all the things that you're going to be able to experience. But we don't actually, many of us never actually make it to the change part. We just kind of stay in the in the daydreaming, consumery kind of phase, and we get a lot of reward from just buying things, to be honest. So one of the things I teach people is like, okay, you got to start. You got to start from somewhere. And now online, I mean, there are so many free resources for starting a raw foods diet. It's pretty incredible. There's really no excuse for limited information at this point. outside of not being able to find it. And I have a 6-day free program. I think it's about a 99-page program guide to get you started on raw foods. It has a menu plan, shopping guide, what to pack for work each day. Like, it pretty much holds your hand on how to start a raw foods diet and do it in an affordable way. Okay. There's even cost estimates. It's pretty an extensive free program. And so you can find that at rawfoodsonaBudget.com. And so the thing is that you have information right now, whether you've spent money on, books or not spent any money. You have what you need right now to get started. And it's until you get started that you don't actually really know what you need. Our minds, like I said, our minds like to run around in circles and tell us that I need this and this and this. I need this whole infrastructure built so that I can do this successfully. Well, I've known a lot of people who've had a whole infrastructure built and done nothing, or they just could not start. The buying part was the easy part. The actual starting part was the hardest part. And what I'm saying is that you need to put more information into the starting part. Just start. And you will learn through the process of what you need. Now, one of the advice that I give people is that, in starting, choose the type of raw foods that works for you. There's not one way of doing raw foods. Just in the same way, there's not one way of eating a cooked diet. The kind of idea that there's only one right way to do it is kind of ridiculous. And so yeah, you want to. What I tell people is to balance out 3 things when choosing your type of raw foods. You balance out budget. You got to be able to afford it, right? Otherwise, it's going to be hard to stick to, or you're going to go into debt trying to make it happen. Okay, it needs to taste good, because if it doesn't taste good, you're not going to stick on it for very long. It's very hard to eat a diet that doesn't taste good for very long. The third thing that you want is it has to be time sensitive. That is, it has to be a diet that matches the amount of time that you can put in to prepare the food, unless you want to pay somebody else to make your food. All right. So if it's not sensitive to the amount of time that you have, your budget and your preference, then you need to change the type of raw foods that you're eating. And I give it a range. I say raw foods can range from simple, moderate to fancy. And me, I'm more of a moderate person. I lean a little bit more to the simple just because I like quick, easy, fresh. And I like the way that food tastes. I don't need to do much to it. But everybody's going to be different, but you want to balance out those 3 things. And so that's really the main advice that I give people when starting out. Because any book that you read, for the most part, is going to be from the perspective of the people who wrote it or the people that were involved. We only know what we know. I mean, that's just a part of our human experience. And so when you put something on paper, it's always going to be a reflection of you, And so anyway, my point is, get started. Start walking in the direction that you want to go to. Don't worry about what the second step is going to be, the third step is going to be, the fourth step. The most important step is to show up and make a step forward, because that's how you learn. That's how you learn what type of raw foods is good for you. That's how you learn, oh, wait, maybe I do want that piece of equipment, or, oh, man, I shouldn't have bought that. I never even use it. I've bought, in my experience of doing raw foods, I started off very simple, but it quickly escalated to becoming very more fancy. But I found out that I don't do fancy well because it's a lot of work and it's very expensive. And I actually like the taste of real food. So yeah, and there's nothing wrong with fancy. You just choose what's most useful for you, what's most nourishing for you. But the thing is, start. That's the most important thing, is to start. Okay. I also want to point out that keep in mind that idea of being a consumer versus a creator, that most of us were taught this for decades, to consume. It's a part of our culture to consume and buy, and even to buy our way out of unhappiness. And we end up accumulating a lot of things that we don't need. We end up wasting a lot of things that we don't need. And one of the things that we waste is our time. And so, because for most of us, money isn't free. We have to put in time at some level, whether it's a lot of time or a little, we have to put in time to get the money. And time is the only resource that we cannot renew. You can make more money somehow. We can recycle things. We can recycle plastic and metal, and there's a lot of things that we can recycle. We can recreate things in labs. We just cannot recreate time. It's the one thing. And so that's what makes money a valuable resource, is that it reflects the time that we put into it. Therefore, do not waste your money. It is not something to throw around. Rather, use your money rather than to be in that mode and that direction of consuming. Use your money to create. Use your money to create joy in other people's lives, to create experiences for yourself. Use your money to help you to unveil and discover the authentic you. That's where your money should go. And know that when you are honest, when you are vulnerable, when you are your true self, that is the best gift that you give to others, not only through inspiration, but also as a living example. And also in that the kindness that you give to others impacts their day, and it changes their interactions with others. We have no idea what I love when people, well, I always find it somewhat funny, and not in a condescending way, but when we try to plan our legacies, and we cannot plan our legacies because we have no idea the impact that we have on people, both good and bad. And even the thought that, the idea of paying something forward, if I was to treat someone to a meal that may make them feel like, oh, just so appreciative and so joyous and just so happy that they give that to someone else, and that person gives that to someone else, you start impacting others' lives, and the mind just cannot conceive or plan out that kind of branch-like kind of that kind of rooting kind of system, the impact that we have on one another. And so yeah, feed yourself. Use the things that you create in your life. But when you put your time in and you receive that resource of money or whatever else you receive, use it to feed your life, and know that by doing that, you're using it to feed others. When you feed your authentic self, because underneath all the layers, we're all human beings, and we all are deeply interested in love. So much to where the thought of being alone and lack of love is incredibly terrifying for us. That's how important it is. And so yeah, use your resources to feed that. And know that it gives to the rest of the world. So that's what I wanted to say. So you see how powerful that consumer versus creator. They're two different directions. So let's start to create, and just take a first step. Don't worry about what the next steps are going to be. Just take one step. That's all you got to do right now. We only have this moment. Who knows? Earthquake may happen and I may be swallowed up. Who knows? I never know you never know what's going to happen. But in this moment, just take one step in the direction that is a beautiful, nourishing direction for you. And that's all you have to do in this moment. In the next moment, do your best to take another step. But don't worry about the next moment that hasn't even happened yet. All right. Have a wonderful day. Thank you all for listening. Give goodness to other people, the people next to you, the people right across from you, above you, below you. Just give goodness. All right. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day. Bye.